Nimrod al campo salía, miraba en el cielo y en la estrellería, vi una luz santa en la judería que había de nacer Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. La mujer de Terach quedó preñada, de día en día le preguntaba de qué tenéis la cara tan demudada. Ella ya sabía el bien que tenía. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel.
Start this with mentioning that I make a couple errors. Like, for instance, in the last video I put out, I had said Anarchist Manifesto, meaning Bundist Manifesto in reference. In this video, during the streaming part, I accidentally refer once to Yehuda Moshe as Yehuda Shlomo. That's probably because I was talking about him a couple days ago, and so I made a slight error. So there are some errors in some of the stuff I say. Be gentle with me, it's my first time. First time openly reading the Megid to people. Haggadah. Boy. I'm going to open this up by first telling you what Revolutionary Orthodox Judaism is. Revolutionary Orthodox Judaism is a multiple choice religion. That's the first part to know. But unlike Hinduism, which is also a multiple choice religion, Revolutionary Orthodox Judaism has an official template to it. Now, it could be considered controversial as it's new. I did not invent this, but I have not seen anybody bring this to social media, largely because of what Revolutionary Orthodox Judaism has always implied. I'll give you some basics here. Haredim, or the ultra-Orthodox Jews, this would be this is acknowledged. Revolutionary Orthodox Judaism acknowledges the ultra-Orthodox Jews and the modern Orthodox Jews, and the conservadox Jews, which would later be renamed as the traditional Jews, and the open Orthodox Jews. So traditional Judaism, open Orthodox Judaism, modern Orthodox Judaism, and ultra-Orthodox Judaism is all considered Orthodox Judaism from the standards of Revolutionary Orthodox Judaism. Revolutionary Orthodox Judaism makes the statement that the Mizurah of Moshe Rabbeinu, or Musa in Arabic, that the Mizorah, the living tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu, is kept. The guardians, the religious vanguard of that, or like those who are the true rightful, forgive the term, gatekeepers of this, it's Neturei Karta. Neturei Karta actually has the full Mizorah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Satmar gets close to it, but Satmar falters in certain areas. The anti-Chabadnik Breslovers even get close to it, but they don't. But they should spend more time trying to just remove Chabad Lubavitch's infiltration of their groups. Neturei Karta International and the majority residents of Meir Sharim are the ones who have the Mezuzah. So this is acknowledged in Revolutionary Orthodox Judaism. But at the same time, Revolutionary Orthodox Judaism embraces the full paradigm shift of Jewish renewal. So this synthesis is essential for the continuation of Orthodox Judaism. On the date of December 21st, 2022, the inhabitants of Meir Sharim were harassed by the Zionists. The inhabitants of Meir Sharim are the Jewish Palestinians. They predate the state of Israel. Let's have a look.
Ja, opnemen die Fenner, ja, opnemen die Fenner.
Dan opnemen Fenner, dat die ganze meisje.
Ja. Die Fenner, die Fenner. Sind die Fenner, für die Fenner, die Fenner. Ja, ja. Die Fenner, die Fenner. Was? Was ist da? Ja, ja. Leider?
En ik kom maar rein voor zijn.
Ja, שוטר? Nee, ארי גוונדו בכלל. אז אותו הסגרתי מת.
Esta me dispiste de ver todo el mundo.
אבל איפה הכיתות לכם? למה אתם לא יהודים? למה רק זה מעניין אתכם בתור יהדות? למה רק זה מעניין אתכם בתור יהדות?
All them Palestinian terrorists. That's why they say Palestinian.
נגד מאה שערים, נגד מאה שערים. נגד מאה שערים, נגד מאה שערים.
טובית! היה לי גימורי.
Aqui no final, eles estão aqui no final. Aqui no final.
ראית מה הוא עשה פה שזה לילד? דוקטת? וואי, הוא מגיע עם התיק מהחיידר,
היטלר! היטלר! היטלר!
Hallo.
Jetzt soll ich machen.
Meir Sharim is very special. It predates the state of Israel, founded sometime of around like 1880 or 1884 or something like that, when a group of highly pious, religious, Ashkenazi, ultra-Orthodox people came to Palestine asking for refuge, that they could make a small settlement there. They were immediately embraced by the Palestinians, and in return, the people of Meir Sharim embraced the Christians and the Muslims, especially the Muslims, particularly the Muslims, as fellow Palestinians. They were very happy to be there. The worst day of their life was when the State of Israel was officially founded in 1948. Ever since then, they have opposed the State of Israel. The reason why the Jewish people are most likely to be destroyed is because of the ignoring of Neturei Karta and Meir Sharim, and the denial of the boon's place in fighting the Nazis. And these factors have more of a symbiotic bond than people realize. The greatest destructive element of classical Bundism is it did seek to colonize the Jewish nation in some way, from an Ashkenazo-centric lens. The flirtation with, for instance, with the Meskilim or the Halushka was completely anti-Semitic. Everybody who's researched it's like the Hebrew word for enlightenment, or the Halushka, I think is how you say it, the Meskilim. Anybody who takes them into account as anything decent really is an anti-Semitic person, because these were the people that first made war on Yiddish. These were the first Jewish Ashkenazi people who made war on Yiddish. And Zionism often will trace itself back to movements like this. Sometimes Bundists do too, but that is a part of the boon that has to go away in order for the boon to flourish. You can't say that, oh, well, Judaism is a philosophy. That's an anti-Semitic move right there. You can't do that. It's not. It's religiosity. You're denying the orientation part when you do that. The fact is, there's many Jewish philosophies that emerge out of Judaism. But the paradigm shift of Jewish renewal works in this particular fashion. We have these reality maps. Judaism has a reality map. The four Dharma religions have a reality map. The Native American tribes often have a reality map. Obviously, Christianity, Islam have very triumphalist reality maps. And by the way, the triumphalism within Islam is in the Quran itself. Now, there are Muslims, as well as Christians, who don't like the systemic, universal triumphalism that happens in both of their religions, and there is a way to help this. You see, there's this notion called Open Orthodox Pan-Abrahamic Judaism, and before anybody freaks out and thinks I'm about to contradict myself from things I've said in the past, just listen. The way it works is that we understand the origins of both the Christians and the Muslims. We understand that the Christians are in fact the children of Esau. Now, this makes sense when you look back at the time of Jesus himself. Okay, so at the time, the guy was supposed to be from Galilee, Nazareth, Galilee, right? The primary language that people spoke over there was not Aramaic. That's Judea that spoke Aramaic. Galilee, the primary language was Greek. There was Aramaic there, but Greek was the real thing. And Idumea, okay, Idumea is the region that was of the Edomites, the children of Esau. they all spoke Greek during the time of King Herod. All right, and much of the flower bed that or the soil that germinated the progenitor, the ritual and religious progenitors of what would become Christianity, starting with Jesus being the foundling, not founder, but foundling of it, comes from the fact that it is a good thing. The Hanukkah thing is a good thing. The Maccabee war to retake the temple from the Hellenized Syrians and the Hellenized Judeans was correct and righteous. However, the aftermath of it was kind of tyrannical because the Edomites were forced to convert to Judaism. In fact, King Herod is a product of this problem as well. So the truth is, whereas we Jewish people can get angry that there's Christianity all we want, and we have the right to be angry that there is a such thing as Christianity, we cannot hate on it necessarily because that comes from the loins of our mistakes. I'll say that again. The problem of Christianity comes from the loins of our mistakes. When you really look into who Jesus actually was, he would have been a Pharisee. This is evident by the fact that he's always arguing with Pharisees, not so much Sadducees. And he does sometimes argue with Sadducees, but why more Pharisees? Well, there's a couple ways to understand how this works. On the one hand, the Pharisees, which are like part of the line of the sages of what would be the Talmud, argued amongst themselves. So the man from Nazareth would have definitely been partaking in those kind of peel pool debates, like in a more ancient peel pool. But what's striking about this is that at this time in history, the Jewish nation in Judea and Galilee was rejecting apocalypticism while Jesus was embracing it. Now, apocalypticism was with Judaism, but this was the period where the emergence of the age of the sage takes place. The age of the prophet had been gone, and so the age of the sage or the rabbi was starting to take place. So as this paradigm shift was occurring, we knew, okay, we are not in the time of the prophets, we're now in the time of the rabbis. And as we were emerging and asserting ourselves covertly, because the Pharisees were such a small group, Jesus, a fellow Pharisee, dropped out. But what is not understood is like, and there's allusions to this in Jewish texts as well, that what he was a questioning student from Galilee, who was already looked down on because of the fact that he was from Galilee, because Galilee's crap. Those that come from Nazareth really were scum, if you look historically, and like Christians may cringe at that. But that I do believe that the Pharisees would say, well, nothing good comes from Nazareth, because that's true. Nothing good ever did come from Nazareth. Whoring, trafficking, exploitation, Hellenization, Greek philosophy over that of Judaism. Yeah, nothing good ever came from Nazareth, especially not Jesus. The enemy is not Christianity. Christianity is your friend. Jesus is your enemy. See, the way it works is that in the open Orthodox pan-Abrahamic Judaism, it's like this. We understand that, and by the way, this is a semi-new philosophy, but it's based on certain archaic sources, but I can't find those archaic sources. And I'm telling you this largely through memory. With open Orthodox pan-Abrahamic Judaism, which was excommunicated, by the way, from the rest of open Orthodox Judaism, and that's why if you try to ask them about this, they're going to say, what are you talking about? You're fabricating that, because there's a lot of scandals that are happening right now and that have been happening within the Orthodox Jewish world, largely over the problem of Zionism. Now, the way it works is that Christianity is a religion which exists for the damned souls. Rome damns souls. Mind you, this is all theological. You don't have to believe any of this, but this is how it works with, and this is, and because the umbrella system of the multiple choice system of revolutionary Orthodox Judaism works, this has been adopted, the notion of the open Orthodox pan-Abrahamic Judaism. And the way it's like this. The idol market, you have to understand that the idol market of Mesopotamia, which existed before Abraham, it was first challenged by Abraham, and it was finally mostly destroyed by Muhammad finally, Well, where do the Christians fit into that? Since I've often said that, no, the Mother Mary thing and the praying to the apostles and making a fake distinction between prayer and worship, that goes back to the early church itself. I mean that. The Protestants have always been liars. The Catholics, whether we're talking Roman Catholic or Byzantine Catholic or Chaldean, as well as the Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox, and we're not talking about which one's more ethical here, like this actual cluster of the church, that is the church. The Protestants are liars. They are deceivers. Now, some versions, older versions of the Protestants, like the Lutherans and the Episcopalians, in a large way have redeemed themselves, but not completely. There is a problem. Like, let's ask this question. Where are all the United States of America Lutherans giving solidarity to the Palestinian Lutherans? Where are they? There's a couple of them around, but you can see way more Catholics involved in these protests for Palestine. I mean, well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the State of Israel destroyed some of the earliest Christian shrines. And it's important to understand this. So the way that the church helped destroy the idol market is while they had these, they call them icons, and if you're Jewish or Muslim, we just say they're idols. But in respect to our Christian friends, these icons they had were not sold like they were in the Mesopotamian market. See, even with the church, the Mesopotamian idol market continued to exist. However, the church did not engage in that market. The church did distribution of these icons. Okay? Like now later, as time went by, the West side from the Catholic Church would get more and more corrupt and would start disenfranchising people through money, which is how you ended up with the disaster that is Martin Luther. Yet, in the full context, we understand, if we accept, for instance, open Orthodox pan-Abrahamic Judaism, that the belief in the first legend, because there's the real Jesus, and then there's the Jesus that his followers believe existed that didn't exist. See, as time went by and Jesus was still dead and he didn't come back, they had to reinvent to themselves what happened. And that's where you end up with these four gospel narratives. Remember, the book of John, though, is the one that's actually anti-Semitic. You could make the argument that the others border on it, but if you look at it, they're not really anti-Semitic so much as the book of John is anti-Semitic. That gospel is horrible. And no, I do not believe that Jewish people have the right to make Christians remove it from their text necessarily. I mean, we could encourage that, but we can't make that happen. And by the way, the Coptic Church does not recognize the book of John. It's very important to know. But the Gospels start the first legend. Jesus is the first legend. Now let's tear down some Western language. How many of you out there think that legend means it's slightly based on truth, but it's exaggerated, and myth means it's completely fictitious and made up? Probably most of you. How many of you realize that you're speaking and thinking incorrectly? Myth is something that's historical. Yeah, it's fantastic and maybe hard to understand because the ancients had strange ways of interpreting what happened. Or perhaps these phenomena exist, or they existed and we don't understand what they were. The truth is, we don't fully know. You can't discredit a myth, though, because a myth is history. A myth is a myth. It may have several things that we would call today a religious adversements or whatever, but that doesn't change the fact that they are historical. The chauvinism to say that fairy tales and myths are lies is a chauvinism regardless, especially if you're trying to hide behind science when you're doing it. So, like for instance, golems exist. What do you think AI is, you idiots? AI is golem. Golem is AI. That's what, well, AI could be good or evil. Oh, it gets into another thing. Science cannot tell you jack or shit about emotions, or about virtues versus sins, or anything like that, but it can identify good and evil. Now, before he flips out on me, let me explain that logically to you. Good. I mean, this is going to parallel with Maoism, third worldism a bit, which is kind of funny, but I'm doing something Jewish here, not communist. Okay, so oh man, I almost lost my place there. So I just found my place in that because, you know, the stream of thoughts are just too much. The way science can measure good and evil is like this, and it does parallel Maoism, third worldism, actually. Global, you hear about global apathy versus global empathy, and global empathy being like essential to third worldism. Well, material empathy in motion is the very definition of good. Material apathy in motion is the very definition of evil. And this can be measured on a scientific level. Nobody wants to measure it on a scientific level because that would mean most things have no application to good or evil. In fact, that's just the truth. Most notions, concepts, and philosophical positions on stuff have nothing to do with good or evil. If you take good and evil from the scientific position I just explained it, you realize that this is true. It's very easy to explain what good and evil are. But the problem people will have is that they can't render everything good and evil anymore. There's no neutrality between good and evil doesn't exist necessarily on a binary. The tree of knowledge, or the tree of science that is, brought Adam and Eve into this world, basically, whereas they had been in paradise. It was a setup because you can always see, unlike what Christians believe, the serpent wasn't the Satan. The serpent was actually basically the okay, so the whole thing is actually God playing with himself. Oh, I don't want to say God. The divine playing with himself. Himself, themself, herself. This is what's going on. And the serpent is there to tempt Eve, because Eve did not hear the command not to eat the fruit. Only Adam heard it. Eve heard it from her husband, but not from God. You see how that works? I really don't like saying God, because there is no God in the sky. There's no bearded man up in the sky. That's what's so freaking ridiculous. But the story, by the way, and this is something that's also pumped up a lot for those that advocate of revolutionary Orthodox Judaism. It's going to take a little while for me to formulate proper programs for people on this, which I will, but I have to be very true to the sources I'm getting, and a lot of people are just scared, you know, and it's not like the Bund where it's emerging out in the open now, finally. It's more like this is a lot more underground because of the persecution it can cause if you join into these things. And it's one of the reasons why I've kept so much data over the years and not jumped on the gun of what everybody wants me to do, is because I've had my own ambitions that I've put on the back burner that I'm not going to be keeping on the back burner anymore. Think there are services people need that my family struggles through, that speaks to us particularly, that will give us, with the knowledge we've accumulated about the Judaisms of the past and like some of the contemporary ones that are repressed by Zionists. We believe we can make a program in place for this. But yeah, I'll give you something here. So, rather than try to say, well, Bereshit or Genesis is misogynist for the way it refers to Eve, you could look at it more from its alchemical and mystical and allegorical positions rather than anything, because that's what you should do. You see, I'm going to tell you some real history here. Tribes were egalitarian. They were gender egalitarian. Gender does not exist in the hunter-gatherer societies. The sexes are equal and there's no concept of gender. Gender emerges in tribal society, but it emerges egalitarian. The men and the women are not, no one's inferior to anyone. There are roles, yes, gender roles that are carried out, because that's what gender is. It's a role, basically, a function. But there was no inequality about it. What changed? Agriculture changed it. See, with the rise of agriculture, in order to expand the building projects they wanted, they would find certain tribes and convince them, or bribe them, that is, to go to a different tribe and steal all the women so that they could breed more children. Now, this is not the fault of tribes. This is the fault of agriculture. Just because it just happened that they succeeded in getting tribes to go along with this doesn't put the tribe at fault. It puts agriculture at fault. This is the problem with the historical materialism. It's not that it's false. It's too ridiculously linear. There's a lot of stuff that Engels said was true, but there was certain stuff Engels said that was just wrong. And don't get me wrong, Engels is far better than Marx. Now, some people will have tried and do try to twist it and saying, you hate Trotsky, you hate Marx, you're an anti-Semite. No, you don't get it. Jewish communists are nothing but self-hating Jews. That's all they are. And regardless of whether you believe it or not, the majority of natives hate feminism, because every native feminist that, like not only me, but any of them that Red Pagan Nicole has known, or even Jason, any feminist native that we've been aware of or known of was a pure assimilationist. They didn't need feminism. They needed a return to their egalitarianism. The concept of the patriarch. Okay, by the way, Dr. Weisfeld is a patriarch, and Donna Newman, alive or dead, I don't know, but I suspect that when she was kidnapped, they drilled the information they wanted out of her and used it against a lot of us, because a lot of things went really weird after the date of December 26th of, I believe it was, in fact, 2023. So time is passing so much, I can't remember when she was kidnapped. But I do remember that it caused more rifts between me and the Arizona Rebellion, which now has been disbanded. But, you know, the point of Pesach, which is what this stream is really about, or this presentation more accurately, is about liberation. The necessity of autonomy, but also the reconciling of old wounds. And it's important to understand that the first legend really was Jesus of Nazareth. He was the first legend. So everybody's got this backwards, like, oh, well, legend means it's kind of true, myth means it's completely fictitious. No, it's the other way around, actually. This is the reason why I actively subvert Western language as much as I can. Because in my mind, as I see it, it's just this. It's a spell. It's a dangerous brainwashing spell. So, in a lot of ways, if you parallel the subjects of the Tower of Babylon, Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve, and all of that, you can see what I'm telling you is true. In a very cryptic way, Breshit or Breshis in Yiddish, or Genesis in English, is actually trying to convey to you the actual truth about where these separation lines came from. You know, Adam and Eve would have actually emerged on the scene while the earth was heavily populated. The Torah describes the gates of Eden as if the enclave that they were in was possibly a couple things. Possibly it was a stargate to another planet. Possibly it was a doorway to another dimension. Possibly it was that Adam and Eve were basically holographic, but that by the time they came out of the gates, they were just as physical as everybody else. It's not really known for sure. But this was what I mean. Myth is truth. If you get into Breshit, it's actually telling you how the horrific system of toiling began. And if you look throughout Breshit, it's particularly agriculture that is attacked, and gardens and villages and wildernesses that are uplifted. This is in direct contradiction to the majority of Mesopotamian worldviews. So you see, Breshit from the beginning plagiarizes both Sumerian and Egyptian literature, but it flips it on its head. It flips it on its head. That is important to know. And so, while we don't agree with the Christians, pretty much on almost anything, we recognize the need for the Christians. Rome damned people. The fact that Rome has been reincarnated today, and I do say fact because if you look at the foundations of the United States of America, it succeeded where all the pseudo-neo-Roman empires failed. It actually pulled off Rome. America is the actual reincarnation of Rome. And so part of the destiny of the final destruction of Rome will have to include Christians. And America is damning souls all the time, so a form of Christianity is necessary. Why is Islam necessary? Well, it's like this. Christianity helped destroy the Mesopotamian idol market by making it free to distribute and basically removing hostile Greco-Roman beliefs, keeping the civic Greco-Roman systems that they loved, but getting rid of the evil pantheons of basically rapists and warmongers, which ironically even the very philosophers of Greece seem to have issues with. So Christianity emerges from several places. There's too much of an emphasis, okay, it was a Jewish movement. Well, kind of, but it was an eclectic, contradictory movement from the start. There was something about the man from Nazareth that reached people deeply. But because he took into the triumphalism through apocalypticism, we rejected apocalypticism. If you look at, for instance, the ancient text, it does reference directly the B'nai Elohim. But the B'nai Elohim would be translated by many people the sons of God. However, this is a bit of a misnomer, because it could be translated as children of God. You know? Just as B'nai Yisrael is not typically translated as sons of God. Sorry, B'nai Yisrael is not typically translated as sons of Israel, but as children of Israel. What does B'nai Elohim refer to? Actually, B'nai Elohim refers to the gods. Not the angels, the gods. Because if you get into the Hebrew scriptures, the names of the theity of the Jews and Samaritans, the name of that theity, the name of the theity of Am Yisrael, is actually the names of the Uritic deities that Judaism pretty much made psychological warfare against. There's even, I don't remember what it is, where it is, but there's even a Hebrew scripture that talks about the Elohim in a council fighting the Elohim. In other words, the appropriator fought the pantheon. Because in a lot of ways, the purest essence of the Most High exists outside our function of reality. But he can dip in because we're really just his imagination. So ergo, when communicating through man, he basically made war on appropriators of worship. So from Abraham to Muhammad, there was a campaign to destroy the idol market of Mesopotamia, and it worked. So, because starting with Abraham, and then you get to the Christians, which refuse to sell these things because they see it's as exploitative, when you get to just distribute this for free. And then you got Muhammad, who gets rid of the last idol market of Mesopotamia in Arabia. This is very different. So in Paradigm Shift, we understand that the context of these reality maths of the Abrahamic religions is not the same as the Dharma religions. And when we understand what Noahide means in all of its essence, there's only one cluster of groups of people that can fit into this category, and that's First Nations in Canada and Native Americans in USA. These are the Noahides. But people would be like, yeah, but if you were to take their concept of unity seriously, they wouldn't be monotheists, they would be panentheists. Well, guess what? Judaism is not, I repeat, not a monotheist religion. It is a panentheist religion. Now, Jewish Renewal tries to make it pantheist, and Terry Carter tries to make it monotheist, but actually panentheism knows that both monotheism and pantheism are terrible misnomers. To quote my son, gods provoke people to kill people. Religions make people want to love each other. The full revolution for interfaith and religionism will be this. Whereas before the religiosity was subjected to the needs of the theology, today it will be reversed and turned on its head. The needs of religiosity, the needs of religiosity will come first. That theology will be suited more to the religiosity as of now, because the age of the rabbi is over. We still need rabbis, because we need dissitors to help us protect the Torah from the Zionists. And there will still be rabbis, but the age of the rabbi is over, because now we can look back at the age of the prophets and the age of the sage, and we can now have finally emerged. We can bring ourselves to the age of Mashiach. But to bring ourselves to the age of Mashiach, we must understand these two words in Hebrew. Sholosh Shavuot, which means 3 oaths. It's pronounced Sholosh Shavuos in Yiddish, but these are the 3 big pillars of Judaism. Number one, Sholosh Shavuot. The 3 oaths which keep us binded forever in diaspora. And number 2, Torah and mitzvahs, as Rabbi Kravitz used to say, Torah and mitzvahs. Number 3, Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam means to repair the world, fix the broken world, because the whole position of the theosophy in Judaism states that when Hashem created this universe, he created a broken one so that the Yehudim would pick up the pieces. Yehudim, by the way, is Hebrew for Jews. If you want to know the Yiddish word for Jews, it's Yidden. But before I go to the main crux of this, I want to make something known about my friend, Comrade Red Pagan Nicole. Nikki is no appropriator. She has a strong awareness of mixed heritage, of her Norse pagan and Celtic pagan tendencies, and she does decolonization from America by reconnecting to these things through great effort and serious devout study. Not only that, but Nikki has family members who happen to be somewhat native themselves. And I have to say this in defense of my comrade here, because do not be mistaken, the Stone Soviet or Stormy Bitch Cunt or whatever has it in mind that she has to overshadow Nikki because Nikki's the real deal, and we all know Kara Stokely is a fraud. Another thing, before I go, one of the things that has been highly repressed is the queer conservadox Jewish movements, which emerged within what is now called traditional Judaism, which was originally called conservadox Judaism. And the primary reason why it was repressed was not the queer thing. In fact, actually, they like, this is a thing that traditional Judaism tries to cover up very hard. Like the last rabbi, and she was a woman rabbi, actually, that I talked to. And I don't respect most women rabbis, but I do if they're sincere. And this rabbi, I call her rabbi. I believe that that's a rabbi. Like, she's a rabbi. And I saw her get fired and excommunicated. Why? Because she was the first to ever start espousing the concepts of what the queer conservadox Jewish movements were saying. And it wasn't just like this notion of queer Kabbalah, which I am going to be willing to explain to people as time goes by. But it's more than that. It's the fact that it was through and through severely anti-Zionist. If you understand the paradigm shift, you understand that you have to keep India in context. They didn't have an idle market problem. They had a caste system problem. And the first thing that happened was there were Hindus that were frustrated with the caste system, and they wanted to know why it existed. And so there were some of their scriptures. And by the way, unlike a lot of other religions, the Hindus have many Bibles, not one central one. But one of their holy scriptures had basically described how the caste system came to be and why it exists, but it was not an endorsement. It was just an explanation of why it's there. And it's if you read it, it's I don't remember which scriptures it was, but I do remember this. It was very profound how they explained it, and it made sense, and it wasn't actually an endorsement, contrary to popular belief. And then, with the rise of the Buddhists and the Jains, the Hindus had to definitely give better responses to the problem of the caste system, until you get to Krishna, the period of Krishna with the Bhagavad Gita. And because it shows how, like, when you're in a certain caste system, you have to hold, to the duty of that, this actually managed to get a lot more Hindus to question the caste system. And by the time, right before the British Empire starts to invade India, the caste system was on the way out. Hindus, at this point, were locked in arms with the Buddhists, the Jains, and the Sikhs, and they were like, we're done with the caste system. What happens? British control of India occurs. They kill all of the righteous ascetic Brahmins who are done with the caste system. They bribe all of the greedy Brahmins to help to put them in control to reinstate the caste system. So you see, the idol's paradigm shift. Understand, don't be addicted to your reality map. The wisdoms of our traditions are true, but that Judaism doesn't have to necessarily contradict Hinduism. And Hinduism doesn't have to necessarily contradict Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism doesn't have to contradict Wicca, and Wicca doesn't have to contradict Christianity. Christianity doesn't have to contradict Islam, and Islam is not likely actually to contradict Judaism that much, although it does, and strongly at certain points. We all exist for a reason. We are all the many radio stations that the divine is tuning into, because otherwise the divine would get bored with us. And then he'd restart the whole hallucination that he's having, which is us in that experience. There's so much more I could say, but like, I've gone beyond even 20 minutes, so I'm going up to the next thing. The need for Jewish-Palestinian solidarity has been recognized by both Jewish people and Palestinian people. The common enemy we have is the Zionists, and that is what this Pesach is largely about. Hashem ist emes. God is truth. Welcome to this very unconventional Pesach Seder, where I have made an amateurish Haggadah for the sake of my family. When this is done, I do hope to actually mail this to Dr. Weisfeld as the concept of the wicked son is referenced. Now, if you want to know something funny, the wicked son is not always depicted as a bad guy. Sometimes he's depicted as actually more righteous than the wise son. It really depends on which Haggadah you're reading from. In this context, the Bundist is actually referred to as the wicked son. The wicked son protecting the wise son. Now, I had made a joke at the Bundist Movement channel years ago that this is the four sons. The wise son is the Bundists, and I had a picture of Dr. Weisfeld, and the wicked son is a Bolshevik, communist assimilated guy. I had a picture of Gil Atzman for that. The picture of Netanyahu to say the Zionist is a simpleton. Then I had a picture of Ted Rubenstein for the one who does not know how to ask a question. So both the simpleton or the simple-natured son, and the one that does not know how to ask a question, that's not changed. What's changed is that the Bundists, particularly in the context of either myself, Dr. Weisfeld, or my son, Corbett A.B., would technically count as the wicked son, and the Terry character rabbis, that would be the righteous son. So that's, the differences here. So I put a lot of care into this. Trigger warning to Dr. Weisfeld, I do use the word Jew. And I do that for grammatical reasons, because English, well, let's be honest, English itself is an anti-Semitic language and was designed to be so. You ever hear those thous and these? That is not ancient English or medieval English or even late English. That is early modern English. Early modern English is a construct. It didn't develop organically. Now, so per request of Red Pig and Nicole, I'm going to read something. The whiteness of Kara trying to disenfranchise and talk over Falcone, which is a form of whitewashing, patronizing, and silencing. What separates me from Kara, that was the first point. This is the next point. What separates me from Kara is the fact that I recognize the Irish as both settler colonizers, but also as colonized people by the Anglos. And we're talking about Irish people in the context of not Ireland, where they're the most justified. We're talking about like settler colonial countries that the British were involved in: America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. So anyway, I'm getting off track here. What separates me from Carr is the fact that I recognize the Irish as both colonized but also colonized people by the Anglos. This same can be said about the Scottish, except with the Scottish on their own land, they are also exploiters as well as exploit. When it comes to Ireland itself, the Irish are totally justified. But within the UK, that whole UK country, the Scottish and the Welsh are both exploited as well as exploiter, whereas the English are only exploiters. They have a right to national cultural autonomy, but the English do not have a right to a country. With a country, there are just too many centuries of being told you're superior to everybody else.
And that's the same position I take on Germany. German nationality is perfectly legitimate. There's nothing nasty about it, but the German country should cease to exist. Now, anyway, I'm getting off track, but as she writes here, the colonizers also come from colonized, but also come from colonized people and the Anglos. This same can be said about the Scottish people who have their land stolen from them and were forced to engage in settler colonial activity to escape the hardships of their own land. The Irish were literally starved out by the English multiple times. Now Cara and Gangaros have tried to silence me because they know I come correct. They do know that. It's actually kind of transparent at this point. It's funny when Cara tries to save face these days. I mean, the last video she did was a video I didn't even see, like saying that she's the one being harassed. Didn't even watch it. She probably fell asleep in the middle of it too. And now that I've said that, she's going to falsely accuse me of being ableist, which is bullshit. She actually is an ableist, by the way. She makes fun of people with Down syndrome. And the person who told me this is not refutable. I will not expose this person, but I've learned a lot about Cara lately. And the Irish were literally starved out by the English multiple times. Now Cara and Gangaros have tried to silence me because they know I come correct. They tried to silence me by bringing up my Norse past, forgetting that not only am I both, but many of our ancestors were colonized and forced to breed with the Norse and Norman, later Anglo settlers. So no, I'm not the colonizers. I am the product of the ancestral rape by the colonizers. Very true. But through that, I have accepted and embraced my heritage, my mixed European cultures, both my Celtic and Norse roots and religion. Full solidarity to Red Pagan Nicole. Heavy solidarity to Red Pagan Nicole. All right, now I have to prep myself before I begin this wonderful Seder for you all. Excuse me, because I do take this very seriously. You can say this with me if you want. Who, that's H-U in pronunciation, not W-H-O. Who, shalom, shalom. Who, shalom, shalom. Who, shalom, shalom. Osei shalom bimramav. Osei shalom bimramav. Osei shalom bimramav. Who. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Ve'yakol Yisrael. V'imru. Amen. V'imru. Amen. 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 All right. So, this Haggadah, I will do my best to show you the pictures in it, because there are pictures, because this is not the typical Haggadah, but due to my particular situation with my family and living with in-laws that are quite chauvinistic in their approach, while thinking that because they're so liberal about it, they're good, they fall short. So I'm going to open this with the actual opening, which some of it is comical and some of it is meant to be taken true, but the whole thing is meant to be taken true. But there are statements here that are going to upset a lot of people, but not if you're genuinely Jewish. It's not going to upset you then. We, the Jewish nation, are a people of lore and mysticism. The Jewish nation is not a nation state. Nation states are fictitious and a product of settler colonial thinking. People nations exist. The Jewish nation is a people nation like the Hindus or like the Sikhs. Just like Hindu nationality and Sikh nationality, race and ethnicity has nothing to do with the mystic religiosity emanating from Jewish nationality. We don't have a homeland. Palestine is not even Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael means land of Jewish people. And remember, the word Israel refers to all the Jewish people around the world. If I pause and give commentary, do understand that that's exactly what a rabbi does when he reads off his shir in these shiva halls. So nothing I'm doing here is unconventional to Jewish positions. Nothing I'm doing here is contrary. I mean, it's not really that conventional, but it's not contrary either. And this Haggadah, by the way, is a mix of Jewish Orthodox views as well as Jewish renewal views. So anyway, I will read that part again. We don't have a homeland. Palestine is not Eretz Yisrael, meaning land of the Jewish people. Palestine is Kodesh HaEretz, meaning the Holy Land. This is often what Nitzuri Karta will say. To avoid sounding like Zionists, they won't say Eretz Yisrael often. They'll actually say Kodesh HaEretz. It depends on which one you're talking to. Palestine. Wait, I skipped ahead. Sorry. Okay. So anyway, we don't have a homeland. Palestine is not Eretz Yisrael, meaning land of the Jewish people. Palestine is Kodesh HaEretz, meaning the Holy Land. The truth is that Eretz Yisrael, land of the Jewish people, is wherever there is a Jewish community located in a place such as a village, a neighborhood. This means shtetl, meaning Jewish neighborhood. Shtetl, a Yiddish word meaning Jewish neighborhood. This means that shtetl is Eretz Yisrael, meaning land of the Jewish people. So following, in fact, this corresponds to the Yiddish Bundist principle of Doikait, which means here-ness, as we live here and not someplace over there. Wherever we are, that is our homeland. While this is a Bundist slogan, this actually is rooted in the Sinai heritage. Sinai heritage, I say, because the whole point of receiving the Torah in the Sinai Peninsula is because in the old world, no disenfranchisement to indigenous people on this continent. When I say old world, I mean Africa, Asia, and Europe. In the old world, especially from when we're talking about Mesopotamia, nobody owned the desert. That's why the Jewish people received the Torah on Mount Sinai, because it is a document of love, it's on Mount Sinai, because Mount Sinai is supposed to be a word related to the word hatred. And it was given to the Jewish people so that nobody could say that any country represented the Torah. Whereas Rabbi Kravitz used to say to me in Brooklyn with his Ashkenazi accent, Torah mitzvahs, it's all about Torah mitzvahs. I myself am Sephardi, but I'm a weird case. I wasn't really, I was almost robbed of my, that's the whole does. We don't need to talk about my refugee experience, and I'll touch upon that more later, but it's complicated. And as we go further here, this means every shtetl is Eretz Yisrael. Palestine used to be Eretz Yisrael. Palestine used to be Eretz Yisrael when we were the custodians of Kodesh HaEretz. Adonai has forbidden the Jewish nation to ever recreate Eretz Yisrael in Kodesh HaEretz. The Jewish nation is more precisely the Torah nation. To be Jewish is to be part of Torah nation. Torah nation is a diaspora nation. Even though diaspora has meant exile for the Jews, this is changing. The Jewish diaspora by itself was ending the exile of the Jews. The state of Israel, founded in 1948, has prevented the ending of this exile because the state of Israel is actually the nation of Amalek, committing holocausts in the name of Judaism. And it's very important to know that Amalek, they're one of the 613 commandments, and actually there's 3 commandments dedicated to this very issue, is the wiping out of Amalek. The problem people have is they forget that this is actually a reference to the appropriators. This means that, for instance, Zionism if we don't take their children away from them and teach them Judaism as opposed to the Zionism they're being brainwashed with, they will, and they have, and they're already doing that to our children. Wiping that out means get rid of the Amalekite culture, which is solely based on the destruction of the Jewish culture. That's its whole purpose. The Jewish diaspora was by itself ending the exile of the Jews. The state of Israel, founded in 1948, has prevented the ending of this exile because the state of Israel is actually the nation of Amalek, committing holocausts in the name of Judaism. The Zionist war on Kodesh HaEretz is not only an attack on Christianity and Islam. This is an attack on Judaism. Amalek is the metaphorical grandson of Esau. That's very important to understand because the metaphorical son of Esau would be Protestant Christianity. That is coming way later. I can't cover that right now. The Zionist war on Kodesh HaEretz is not only an attack on Christianity and Islam, and by the way, when we say Christianity, we're referring more or less to the Oriental Christian Church, and to some extent the Roman Catholic Church, to some extent. They started the whole Western Church problem. And whiteness, and Westernism, all that shit goes together. It's funny how that's turned against the Catholics. Not that it's funny, but it's given a lot of Catholics over the last centuries opportunities to build bridges with Jewish, Muslim, and even Christian of the Orient. Isn't it funny how the evil of Protestants and Mormons brings everybody together? But going further, Amalek is the metaphorical grandson of Esau. The will of Amalek is a very real thing. During the high holiday of Purim, we remember Lord Haman, the Amalekite, who tried to convince the king of Iran to kill all the Jews. Thanks to Mordecai and Esther, the will of Amalek did not prevail. Most of the stories of the Jews are so well remembered, it is not always easy to recall when a story is a metaphor or a literal event. In this modern world of secular distractions, it is important to remember the power of myth. We can never forget myth is truth. Myth is truth. Because God is truth. However you choose to define that. We recall tonight Passover means liberation of native Palestine and the liberation of diaspora Judea. The oppression of Pharaoh in Egypt is not something distant in our past. This is happening here, now, tonight. Tonight, we recite in our own differing ways around the world the Megad, which means the retelling. Abraham was promised by the divine to be the founder of many nations. This did come to pass. 3 central nations came from Abraham. Ishmael is the nation directly from Abraham. This is because Ishmael was the firstborn son of Abraham. Ishmael was the father of 12 righteous sons who founded 12 tribes. These 12 tribes became the Arabs. However, the ongoing covenant the divine made with Abraham was not continued with Ishmael, although it would be picked up again by Ishmael because of Muhammad. The ongoing covenant the divine made with Abraham was continued with Isaac, the second son of Abraham. Isaac was born from Abraham's wife Sarah. Ishmael was born from Hagar, Abraham's concubine. Isaac had 2 sons. His wife Rebekah gave birth to twin sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau came out first, but Jacob was holding his heel on the way out. In other words, Yaakov was holding the heel of Esau as they were coming out. I keep losing my place. Hold on. This is important, very important. Isaac foolishly favored Esau. Rebekah wisely favored Jacob. Esau gave his birthright to Jacob. He cared so little for it. So why him? Wait, I skipped. Sorry. I have to. This is why, by the way, so as I'm screwing up, I might as well take advantage of my own screw ups. This is why, you'll see like these pens, which often with a finger on the Torah scrolls, because like you can lose your place. Although this is all written in English for everyone's convenience. I am going to, however, use the method. Okay. Esau came out first, but Jacob was holding his heel on the way out. Isaac foolishly favored Esau. Rebekah wisely favored Jacob. Esau gave his birthright to Jacob. He cared so little for it. So the covenant the divine made with Abraham, then with Isaac, was maintained through Jacob. It's almost like as if the Torah is suggesting that the second-born son, it deserves the inheritance more than the firstborn, or it's not really doing that, but it's almost as if that's being suggested. So the covenant the divine made with Abraham when Isaac was maintained through Jacob. Sorry, the covenant first made with Abraham, then with Isaac, was maintained through Jacob. But why him? Isaac did not favor Jacob. This has a lot to do with why the woman of the house lights the Shabbat candles instead of the man of the house. Truly, if the man was to light the Shabbat candles, he may by mistake burn down the house. That's deliberate hyperbole. Don't give me crap for it. Hey, I have to preserve the matrilineal way, otherwise misogyny takes over, and that's the truth. That's why we can't. That's one of the primary reasons why we don't recognize a Jewish father having a child without the Jewish mother, although that should cause an immediate acceleration of conversion if that child wants it, which is one of the things I'm going to help rectify when I actually retire from the Bund. And just be clear, once a Bundist, it's just at some point I'm going to have to retire from the Bund because people are asking me more for what I more have a natural linking towards. I mean, now Bundism comes naturally to me, but I started off very wonky about it. I was also a lot younger then too. Truly, if the man was to light the Shabbat candles, he may by mistake burn down the house. No, it is so much better if a woman says the Shabbat prayer and lights the candles, for the Shekinah will rest on her head, blessing the home. If a man tries to do this, he may offend Shekinah. Without her, you cannot even know that Adonai is the truth. If, however, the man lives by himself, has no wife, living alone, he should light the Shabbat candles just before the Shabbat comes. This is still not as good as a woman lighting those candles. Truly unfortunate is the unmarried man. Now, I did not do that as a way to slide against single men. It's just if you're Jewish, it's very hard to find fulfillment if you're not passing your Jewishness to children. And to do that, you need a Jewish wife, basically, that will bear children. And not only, but what a lot of people don't realize is that the process for that means that she owns your house. You don't own your house, she owns your house. Now, due to it no longer being the Middle Ages, a lot of this is being reimagined, and I'm not going to say that that's bad or good. I'm not going to take a stance on that. I may in the future, but that's none of your business until further notice what my actual stance on that is. Also, being that I'm still political, it's very important that I'm careful what I say about my religious views. But anyway. I had to make that disclaimer for Dr. Weisfeld, because this is not a slight on him for not being married. Maybe he wouldn't get married. It wouldn't work well. It wouldn't work. Like, all of us who love him, would be like, I give it a month, and I'd be like, I give it 2 days. That's what would happen in that scenario. Baby's one of the elderly bachelors, but also one of the most well-fit ones I've ever known. That guy can swing a pickaxe over his head. Seriously. Did Comrade Net just say Dr. Weisfeld killed Trotsky? No, I didn't say that. Men can't take care of themselves. Again, that's deliberate hyperbole, by the way. Jacob had 12 sons. These 12 sons founded 12 tribes. Eventually, the 12 tribes of Israel became slaves in Egypt. The name of Israel is not just a name. Israel is the name of Jacob. Israel is also the name of the Jewish people worldwide, wherever we are. The 12 tribes of Israel refers to the 12 tribes founded by the 12 sons of Jacob. Jacob was the leader of the Hebrew tribe first founded by his grandfather Abraham. The 12 tribes of Jacob, Israel, became the Torah nation when Moses, the prophet of the divine, received the Torah on Mount Sinai. This Seder opens up with Kiddush, the sanctification over wine. This is certainly unremarkable after all. Kiddush is the opening act of every Shabbat and holiday meal, but Kiddush, a ritual sanctification of time, has the intimate and unique connection to Pesach's central theme, autonomy. How so? By the way, almost every Haggadah, when you have an English translation, will say something like freedom of liberty or liberty. I deliberately chose to use the word autonomy here. As the 12 tribes of Jacob Israel were about to be released from slavery, Adonai instituted a new calendar. This month shall mark for you the beginning of months, the first of the month of the year for you. Exodus chapter 12, verse 2. So going further, why is this the first mitzvah? Mitzvah, by the way, is Hebrew for commandment. Why is this the first mitzvah communicated to a free nation? A slave, and then we answer further. A slave's time is not his own. He is, by the way, this term he is a masculine term, but it also can be non-binary or gender fluid. That's Jewish logic, by the way, just so you know. I don't know how many people realize that, but that's why he, for instance, who is the Hebrew word for he, the pronoun of he, him in Hebrew, but it's also the Hebrew equivalent to the Sanskrit om, which is acknowledged by all 4 of the major Dharma religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. Of course, Sikhism uses Punjab as opposed to Sanskrit because of the contemporary reasons when it emerged. Although they do use that word om, and there's a lot of Sanskrit influence, like heavy Sanskrit influence into Punjab. And by the way, Hindi, modern Hindi, is not the same exactly as Sanskrit, or although it is the direct descendant there of it. But anyway, I just derailed, but it would take me a while to get used to this because, like I said, like this isn't too far off from how a rabbi does a shir. A shir, by the way, refers to a whole page of some sacred text. The slave's time is not his own. He is at the beck and call of his master, even when the slave has a pressing personal engagement. The taskmaster's need will take priority. In contrast, freedom, I should have wrote autonomy here. Freedom is, this part is semi-plagiarized from online Haggadahs, but also I tampered with it to make it more accessible to you and more correct, because I don't like English translations of these texts. I hate these English translations. They're so, forgive me for falling back on that thing I hate with utter passion, white. It's so white, the way these things get translated. I don't like that. Anyway. In contrast, freedom is the control of our time, or more accurately, autonomy. we determine what we do when we wake up in the morning. We prioritize our day. This is true for an individual, but also for a nation. Adonai commands the Torah nation to create a Jewish calendar because, as an independent nation, the Torah nation should not march anymore to an Egyptian rhythm, celebrating Egyptian months and holidays. Instead, the Torah nation must forge a Jewish calendar with unique days of rest, celebration, and memory. Controlling and crafting our time is the critical first act of autonomy. Kiddush says this out loud. We sanctify the day and define its meaning. We proclaim this day as significant, holy, and meaningful. We fashion time, claim ownership of it, and fashion it to a potent contact point with the divine, nationality, and mystical religiosity. This is a quintessential act of Jewish autonomy. These days in this modern world of secular distractions, we often feel short of time, that time controls us. Kaddish reminds us that real autonomy and self-respect is a matter of controlling time for ourselves, to shape our life in accordance with the values of seeking the truth over the conveniences of confirmation bias. And if that sounds like it's bias in favor of truth seekers over that of free thinkers, it is, and I do apologize for anyone who may be offended by that. But that's the whole point of the truth seekers. The truth seeker opposes the free thinker's will to twist reality to their own liking for their own confirmation biases, as opposed to an investigation of what is sound and what is not. Which, by the way, is what a mystic refers to. A mystic refers to a truth seeker. It does not mean some weird hocus pocus crap. And while mystics like me believe in magic, there are mystics that completely oppose magic. I've met them. They're everywhere. But so are the ones who embrace magic over science. And that's me. Why? Because all science deals with is facts. And facts don't save you. They can tell you a lot. They can give you means, but that's the tool. It's not the end being. Dissecting things doesn't tell you what the function is. That it remains my biggest problem with science. It's just too ridiculously factual. And facts don't make the sum of truth. The science also can't measure emotions, no matter what they fucking say. They can't. They're looking at, they trivialize people by looking at, oh, chemicals this, chemicals that. And the worst part is, the best thing the scientists can do is to ignore the profit motive and use all that data. They have so much amazing data that we could utilize to help solve climate change as a crisis. But no, the profit motive corrupts that. So I do want to make that clear. Despite my distaste towards science, I see science as useful if you could just get rid of the profit motive, because then science could operate as science. So I don't have here, although I guess I'll just simulate it for you. The first cup of wine is poured. Lift up the cup with the right hand and say the following Kadesh/Kiddush. Now, this is not going to be done in Hebrew because that will confuse people, so I have translated it basically into Yiddish. Blessed are you, Adonai Eloheinu, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the wine. And now we're going to get to the 4 sons. If anybody can see that, you see that. I don't know how to make it more in focus for you. It says, Megid, the 4 sons. It is a tradition that the Torah nation retells. It is a tradition that the Torah nation relates to 4 types of sons. One who is wise, one like Rabbi Weissel or Rabbi Filtman. One who is wicked, like Dr. Weisfeld, myself, or Corbett AB. One who is simple nature, Zionists. The one who does not know how to ask, yes, definitely Ted Rubenstein, who I do hope to stream with because he's an amazing researcher. Now we're on the wise son. And that is a picture of a pious Orthodox Jewish man walking through Meir Shirim. Or at least that's what the picture claims. Please do not come after me if I made a mistake. But it looks like it could be Meir Shirim. And I do want to say this. I am of the position that the holiest people in the world live in Meir Shirim. By the way, Meir Shirim is the name of the neighborhood of the Jewish Palestinians, which predate the state of Israel. And I disagree with calling it colonial because this settlement was completely approved by the Palestinians themselves. And to this day, the inheritance of Meir Shirim are so loyal to Palestine because of that. They'll get physically violent when the Zionists come and try to force them to be in their armies to hurt the Palestinians. Because why would they want to hurt their own people? Think about it. Big embarrassment for everybody. Ashkenazim and Palestinians have extremely similar DNA. But anyway, so this pink is where the eldest son asked the question. So my own son will be probably reading these parts. Okay, the wise son. What does he say? And this is what the wise son's supposed to say. Actually, it's the kid answering the father. What are the testimonies, the statutes, the laws that Adonai Eloheinu commanded you? That was the question. And by the way, Eloheinu is typically translated as our God. I hate that translation. I prefer to take the word Eloheinu and translate it as this our theity, because it goes from divine to theity. It's divine, but when you say theity, you're being a lot more personal. Theity, by the way, is like the word deity, except you cross out the D and replace it with a TH. And that's an interfaith term, theity. Reply. And you must tell the laws of Pesach. After eating the Pesach offering, one does not eat anything more. The wise son is the Torah scholar. Without him, the Torah nation will cease to exist. This is the son every God-fearing Jewish family prays to be blessed with. The wise son is interested in Torah study, truth-seeking, and intellectual debates. Almost every young boy living in Meir Shirim can be seen as embodying the wise son. The wise son is engaging in religious activism against the state of Israel. If he lives outside of Meir Shirim, he is probably a member of Neturei Karta International. The wise son is protective of Muslims. His disagreements with his Muslim friends is not something which bothers him. Rather, he celebrates these disagreements. The wise son is not in support of the sectarianism of Chabad's triumphalism. And by the way, if you want to know one of the reasons why Judaism, as much as Judaism is very friendly to Islam, why, just like the Christians, Islam can at times be looked from a Jewish lens as, okay, like I really respect you, but you guys are way off on some things. One of these reasons is within the Quran itself is triumphalism. Judaism rejects triumphalism, by the way, but it is, in fact, the only two religions. Like every religion will have a strand that has a sense of triumphalism, but only Islam in its roots and Christianity before that even in its roots has a sense of triumphalism. At least with the Islamic triumphalism, non-Muslims don't go straight to hell. The wise son is protective of Muslims. His disagreements with his Muslim friends is not something which bothers him. Rather, he celebrates these disagreements. The wise son is not in support of the sectarianism of Chabad's triumphalism. Triumphalism is a sin which belonged exclusively to Christians and Muslims. But then the Chabad cult decided to create a Jewish version of triumphalism. The wise son loves the Chabad Tanya, the Balatanya book. For those who don't know what that is, I don't have time to explain that right now. Yet, he hates the Chabad cult, so he loves the Chabad Tanya, but not the Chabad cult. The wise son is the one reminding everyone else that Chabad Lubavitch is no longer Jewish, and that has not been so for more than a few decades now. The wise son considers his mother to be next to God. The wise son also considers his father to be his first guide in life. The wise son fears God. He knows that God is truth. You can also pick up on when I'm choosing to employ the word God and when I'm not, and for what, and it should be obvious for what reasons and why. Now, my favorite, the wicked son. This is about me, AB, and my son right here. The wicked son says, the wicked son, what does he say? It shows you that. The wicked son, what does he say? Then you see the pink question. What is this service to you? And then we answer. To you, he says, not to him. When he sets himself apart from the community, he denies the very core of our convictions. And you must set his teeth on edge and tell him, because of this, Adonai acted for me when I came out of Egypt, for me and not for him. Had he been there, he would not have been redeemed. Harsh words, but I accept them. Because the truth is, and this is not exactly stated here, but it is stated kind of a bit in the end, that the wicked son is the result of the disconnection of rabbis. I think it's also important to understand that the four sons narrative is more or less something shared by Ashkenazim and Sephardim, maybe some Mizrahim, but a lot of other Jewish groups don't like to include it in their Megillah. I do, because it's absolutely essential in explaining certain things, as I have already explained some of it. The wicked son is the Jewish civil rights activist. He is not actually wicked. He is called wicked because he is not a Torah scholar. The wicked son tends to transfer his Torah values into secular stances on justice. He is not always a secularist, but he is always just a bit more secular. Society is run by three modes of civilized organization. These three modes are civil, monastic, and secular modes. Because in most countries, the secular mode is dominating. Because in most countries, the secular mode is the dominating one, these countries become repressive, lacking genuine democracy. Some, few actually, insist on making the monastic mode the dominating mode. This is how it is done in the Islamic Republic of Iran. While Iran is a better democracy than most countries claiming to be a democracy, the monastic mode, being the dominant one, causes idiots to falsely label Iran as a theocracy. The monastic mode's domination over Iran is why LGBTQ+ is shunned by the entire society. Shia culture is straight, not gay, not queer. Now, I constantly defend Iran, but I put this in here because it is important to understand that this is true about Iran. Iran is very good if you are, yes, even if you're a Sunni Muslim. If you're a Sunni Muslim, you don't have to be Shia. Sunni Muslim, Jewish, Christian, but also Zoroastrian. But if you are Baha'i faith or if you're from anything LGBTQ+, no, they're going to be super harsh on you, and that's where that's one of the biggest flaws actually of Iran. But anyway, in spite of the hate fools give the wicked son, in spite of the hate that some fools give the wicked son, some can argue he is more righteous than even the wise son. Secularism is when civilization puts the secular mode as ruling power over both the monastic mode and the civil mode. The wicked son tries to put the civil mode as ruling power over both the monastic mode and the secular mode. The wicked son is actually the one protecting the wise son. And here is a picture of Dr. Weisfeld, and he actually did protect Rabbi Feldman once. I don't remember the details, but this Zionist piece of shit came up and says, hey, we're going to cut your beard off or something like that. I'm sorry if I'm being slightly hyperbole. I don't remember the actual details. But who steps in? Action Man, AB Man is like, you will not touch this man's beard. And AB can fight. That's something a lot of people don't realize because AB prefers using nonviolence. But AB can actually fight. He can kick ass, okay? Anyway. the simple-natured Son. The simple-natured Son. What does he say? And then this is the pink reply. Oh, sorry, this is the pink question, and then the reply. The pink question is, what is this? And like I said, it's more like the firstborn son. In my case, my son will be reading these questions to me. So again, the first part, the simple-natured Son, what does he say? Then the question, what is this? Then the reply, and you must tell him, with a strong hand Adonai brought us out of Egypt from the grip of slavery. By the way, there is only one unity in existence. But when we say Adonai, we are saying something masculine, and we are saying Shekinah, we are saying something feminine. And while I'm of the more Jewish renewal position that Adonai and Shekinah go the same way that like Shiva Shakti does, but originally Shekinah was used primarily at when it got explored through the Zohar. And it's not really originally, but when the Zohar expanded what the Shekinah is, the explanations of it. Shekinah was often seen as the female counterpart to Kodesh HaBaruch Hu. Kodesh HaBaruch Hu is Hebrew for the Holy One, blessed be He. However, it is now becoming popular. By the way, understand this word et. Et is spelled with the aleph and the tav at the end, and that is the aleph is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and the tav is this last letter in the Hebrew alphabet, the 22nd. And when you put them together, it's et. And rabbis used to love debating the particle known as et. And then, of course, the first prime minister of Israel tried to wipe it out. Very sexist of him. What I'm getting to here is the actual, as I understand, just as Shekinah is really actually the feminine equivalent of Adonai, I understand the actual feminine equivalent of Kodesh HaBaruch Hu to actually be et emet Baruch He. And what that means is et, which I'm not sure how to pronounce. I'm not sure how I would translate that word et, but it's basically pronounce it, or you could say it. You could say it. What it translates to is infallible truth. Blessed be she. So the best way to translate et emet Baruch He is basically the infallible truth, blessed be she. And by the way, he in Hebrew is she, her pronouns, just so you know. And it's only he the Hebrew word he, which is also 3 letters, only means she, her. It's not like who, whereas who is masculine, but it can also be gender fluid or non-binary, depending on what context used. So anyway, yes. The simple nature son, what does he say? And then the pink, what is this? And then in the reply, and he must tell him, with a strong hand Adonai brought us out of Egypt from the grip of slavery. The simple natured son is the one who is most likely to betray Torah nation. What ways does he do this? There are many ways he can do this. The most likely are these: becoming a Messianic Jew. Messianic Judaism is not Judaism. Also, every Jew who becomes a Messianic Jew is no longer a Jew. Period. You're an anti-Semite fascist if you claim to represent or to be part of Messianic Judaism. Let's make that very clear. You have a beef with real Christians and you have a beef with Jewish people if you act like that. If you do that shit. This is one of the most disgusting Protestant things that was ever created. And all Protestantism, even the ones that have been semi-redeemed, like the Lutherans and the Episcopalians, they all began with colonial aspirations. All of them. Messianic Judaism is an attempt to turn both Judaism and Christianity into the same religion. Messianic Judaism is the greatest insult to both Christianity and Judaism. Other ways the simple-natured son is most likely to betray Torah nation include participating in Jews for Jesus, participating in Zionism, participating in Americanism. Jews for Jesus is an organization which targets Jews. It attempts to turn such Jews into evangelical Christians. And these evangelical Christians are like a bunch of pharaohs for us in our time. So whereas we had to deal with Pharaoh, now we have 1,000 pharaohs who either have two options: kill them or make them into us. And actually kill them is more desirable for us, because the absolute humiliation of living outside of our culture, we would rather die, myself included. It is better to live than to die, but it is better to die than have your spirit broken. That is one of the strongest stances I live by. I'm almost done here with this one. In attempts to turn such Jews into evangelical Christians, who can also be called Zionists, Jews for Jesus is about removing Judaism from the Jews, ensuring Jews practice evangelical Christianity instead. It is the simple-natured son who is most likely to become brainwashed by the ideology of Zionism. It is also the simple-natured son who is most likely to believe in the lies of anti-Semitism. The simple-natured son is the son which every God-fearing Jewish family prays to never be cursed with. And as you can see, it's a picture of Netanyahu. This part, the son doesn't. This part, my kid will not be read. I just monologue through this one, because you'll see there's no pink, and there's reasons for this. Why is the reason, you may ask? Because the one who does not know how to ask a question wouldn't ask a question if he doesn't know how. Do you get it? And the one who does not know how to ask, you must open the story for him, as it is said, and you shall tell your child on that day, because of this Adonai acted for me when I came out of Egypt. The wise son is the Torah scholar. Without him, the Torah nation will cease to exist. The wise son will always be the most valued, not because he is somehow superior, but because without him there can be no Torah nation. And then we go further into the actual subject, which is the one who does not know to ask. Now, one may ask, why did I have to insert that thing about the wise son? And that's because the one who does not know how to ask should never remain the one who does not know how to ask. He should aspire to either be the wicked son or the wise son. Because if he doesn't aspire to that, the simple-natured son will brainwash him, which happens all the time. I will re-emphasize that these archetypes really only apply primarily, not even to Mizrahim anymore. This didn't apply as much to Sephardim, but now it applies to us more than it ever did, and it actually applies triple the amount, I would say, to what the Ashkenazim. And that's the thing. There will always be Ashkenazim. There will always be Sephardim, but in the continent of Canada and the United States area, I think they're fusing to become Jewish Europeans, especially in combating Zionism. I mean, and I'm Sephardi. Ana Yehudi, Ana Sephardi, Yo soy al-Andalusi. The one who does not know how to ask a question is the son who is most likely, the one who does not know how to ask a question is the son who is most likely to have never been taught anything. The man who comes to mind in this is Ted Rubenstein. Jews like this don't know anything. They are always the most well-meaning, though. Every Jew in this sad condition should be given extra care. The one who does not know how to ask tends to be misled by the simple-natured son, and it is not okay to shy away this person. There are high penalties for that. And here's a picture. And yes, I did get these from Bim Bam. These particular pictures, yes, obviously. Just in case you wanted to know. Because like I said, this is like stitched together. And I do this every year for my family. I would love to mail Dr. Weisfeld a copy of this when we're done. I hope that you are tuning in, Amy. This story of the four sons has been told and retold many times. It serves to show us the archetypes within Jewish families. While the story of the four sons was not in the original Haggadah, this is a story which has become very popular to both Ashkenazi Jewry and Sephardi Jewry. See, my own introduction to my stuff was spot on. This is because this story applies to the conditions of European Jews. Make no mistake, there is magic found in the Passover ritual meal. This Migad, by the way, Migad is related to the word magi, which relates to the word magic. Magic is not what you think it is, people. It's so not what you think it is. This Megid is unusual, but relevant to us in our struggles. The wise son can best be seen as a notorious Carthage Jew. The wise son wants world peace. He wants world peace, but he knows without justice there can be no peace. The wise son is dedicated to the Torah. Without him, the Torah nation can never exist. The wise son synthesizes the writings of Rashi, Rambam, Ramban, the Arizal, and the Baal Shem Tov. In his heart, there are no contradictions, except that if you read from these people, they constantly contradict each other. Okay, where would Peel Pool be without that? In his heart, there are no contradictions. Paradox is truth. God is truth. The truth is the great paradox. Therefore, God is paradoxical. Reality is paradoxical reality is paradoxical because only God exists. Only God exists. Or more accurately, only the truth exists. Judaism, by the way, is not a monotheist religion, no matter what even some of the most righteous Jews will tell you. It's actually a panentheist religion. It is not a pantheist religion. It is a panentheist religion, kind of like the Sikhs. That's why when it comes to how you can talk about the theosophy of whatever divinity is, you'll notice the Sikhs and the Jews are almost identical. Not the Jews and the Muslims. What the Jews and the Muslims have that seem almost identical is ritual, because Jews don't do Dharma rituals necessarily. We don't use images, and it's important to understand that you can't take the idols away from Hindus because it's different. See, from Abraham all the way to Muhammad, there was a social war against the Mesopotamian idol market. And that's important to understand. Whereas when you go to India, it's very different. The oppression is not those images. Those images are intertwined into how they connect with divinity. And it teaches them very moral things. So for them, it's not idolatry. For us, it is. But the real guilt of that world is not those idols. It's the caste system. Each region locally has a different context. God is truth. Lovingly, I say to my Christian and Muslim friends, you forget that all the time. That's where the Sikh critique of Islam is most spot on, by the way. And by the way, Islam is a very beautiful religion. Don't let what I'm saying make you think that it's not. It's one of the most beautiful religions you could ever see. And one of the ones with the greatest sense of both brotherhood and sisterhood I've ever seen in my life. And you can quote me on that. The truth is the great paradox, therefore God is paradoxical. Reality is paradoxical only because only God exists. The wicked son can best be seen as a Bundist. Wicked son. Wicked son. The wicked son can be best seen as a Bundist. When the wicked son sets himself apart from the community, he denies the very core of our convictions. That's why we get rusty, AB. It's not, remember, this isn't the Christian world, but, oh, you're damned because you're a bit evil. There's nothing evil about you or me or my son. We do this for the wise ones. That's what we wicked ones do. We are toxic to the anti-Semites. When the wicked son sets himself apart from the community, he denies the very core of our convictions. This is the source of calling him wicked. This is almost always because of a disconnect within the councils of the rabbis from the Jews most concerned with Jewish civil rights activism, and AB understands this in a very, very intimate way, what I'm saying here. The simple-natured son can best be seen as a Zionist. No one Jewish should ever be simple-natured. No, to be Jewish is to be complicated beyond reason. Yeah, but logically so. What a paradox. No one Jewish should ever be simple-natured. Nuance means everything to Torah nation. Zionism only got strong when Jews became simple-minded after the Holocaust. The simple-natured son may not even be Jewish, only mistaken for being Jewish, even though he is probably not. The one who does not know how to ask a question can best be seen as Ted Rubenstein. What the one who does not know how to ask needs is outreach from Jewish organization. I'm going to say that again. What the one who does not know how to ask needs is outreach from Jewish organization. It is the duty of both the wise son and the wicked son to protect the one who does not know how to ask from the simple-natured son. Too many Jews fall into this category. The world is full of Ted Rubensteins. It is not correct to harm Jews like Ted Rubenstein. They need outrage. They need outreach. I'm saying it again. They need outreach. They need outreach, not shaming. Now we know this story in full. And then I took some stuff together, ripped it off the Chabad website because fuck it, everything that they have will be ours soon, brothers and sisters, and those that bounce in between genders. We will take from Chabad. We are going to take it from them, taking their means of production to make it ours, and this will happen, both legally and illegally, without shame and without apology. Down with Chabad Lubavitch. And down with Meir Kahana, may his name be removed from the Book of Life. Oh, that's going to piss off a lot of people, and I don't give a shit. The Seder plate, in Hebrew it's kiara, and you can see that here. Okay, so actually, I'm not sure if like this is in focus. Kiara is the focal point of the proceedings on the first two nights of Passover. Whether it is an ornate silver dish or a humble napkin, it bears the ceremonial foods around which the Seder is based. They are matzah, zerora, egg, bitter herbs. Wait, let me hold on. Let me fix that. I actually made a serious mistake just now. I'm sorry about that. Okay, let me go again. Matzah, zerora refers to shake bone. Beitzah, which is an egg. Murua and charoset, bitter herbs. Chasoret, I've never been able to say that word very well, which refers to the paste. And then the karpus, which means vegetable. If you are wanting to do this vegetarian style, I strongly suggest substituting the lamb or the chicken with an eggplant. That is my highest suggestion to you, because eggplant is, oh, I love eggplant. Anybody who doesn't is just tasteless. But there you go. So yeah. It is best to prepare all Seder foods before the onset of the holiday in order to avoid halakhic questions. Every symbolic food on the Seder plate abounds in meaning and illusion. Not illusion, illusion with an A. Not bad for an autodidact, huh? Every symbolic food on the Seder plate abounds in meaning and allusion. Here you will learn the descriptions of each of the foods, the reason why it is included, the method of preparing it, and its role in the Seder meal. And then, like that, you have that. All right, now, guess what? Guess what, everybody? We only have 3 pages left. That's how simple I kept this, so that you can get to the meal immediately. Megid, the beginning. In Megid, in the beginning, the Israelites were idol worshippers. In the beginning, our predecessors, the Israelites, were idol worshippers, but now deity has drawn us close to his service. As it is said, Joshua said to all of the people, "This is what Adonai, power of Torah nation, has said. Beyond the river, your predecessors always dwelled, Terah, the father of Abraham, the father of Nahor, and they served other powers. Adonai says, but I took your father Abraham from beyond the river, and I led him all the way across Kodesh HaEretz." "And I multiplied his offspring and gave him Isaac. And to Isaac I gave him Jacob and Esau. And I gave Esau Mount Seir as an inheritance, while Jacob and his children went down to Egypt. Blessed is the one who has kept his promise to Torah nation. Blessed is he, for the Holy One calculated the end and fulfilled what he had spoken to our father Abraham. In the covenant between the pieces. As it is said, he said to Abram, know that your successors will be strangers in a land not their own, and they will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. But know that I shall judge the nation that enslaves them, and then they will leave with great wealth." So it says here a detail, by the way, about the matzah. The matzot, or matzos in Yiddish. And AB, please forgive my terrible Yiddish pronunciations. The matzot are covered and the wine cup is raised. And this promise is what has stood by our predecessors, the Israelites, and us. For it was not only one man who rose up to destroy us. In every single generation, and by the way, when you do this, your wine glass is supposed to be raised. I should say this, by the way. Because at a certain point I'll stop cutting my hair altogether, and because I'm going semi-vegetarian, and because I have not drunk alcohol for a long time, I am technically going to become an actual Nazarite. By the way, if Dr. Weisfeld actually stopped drinking alcohol permanently, he would immediately be counted as a Nazarite by a lot of us. And in fact, in theory, I think that he is supposed to be a Nazarite. See, and if he did that, he could go and live in Meir Shreem without having to cut his hair. I mean, they can't really force him, but like, it would work. He could just say he's a Nazarite. I think AB should retire in Meir Shreem as a Nazarite. I do think that that's what he should do, because then he could speak Yiddish all the time. That's what that man needs. And this promise is what has stood by our predecessors, the Israelites, and us, for it was not only one man who rose up to destroy us. So that you're in the mood. In every single generation, people rise up to destroy us, but the Holy One, blessed be he, saves us from their hands. See, it's weird because like when you go through these motions, often swaying is, and you don't sway when you hold this up, just so we're clear. That would be very destructive. Like, where's all the grape juice going? Well, he's davening for whatever reason. Oh. Did you? Yeah, there's not much picture here. But now we're getting to this next year in Jerusalem. This is important. The Zionists love to twist. We start off next year in Jerusalem. The Zionists love to twist this part of the Haggadah to mean become a Zionist and more to. All right. The Zionists love to twist this part of the Haggadah to mean become a Zionist and move to the evil settler colonial country of Medinat Amalek. The Zionists have been deceiving the world for more than half a century by calling the evil settler colonial country of Medinat Amalek by the words Medinat Yisrael. Medinat Yisrael means state of Israel in the English language. Now this is very important. And I'm not going to lie, this is actually the logic of revolutionary Orthodox Judaism, not ultra-Orthodox Judaism or modern Orthodox Judaism. By the way, revolutionary Orthodox Judaism does recognize AB's lifestyle as legit. Not encouraged, but legitimate. It is legitimate. And the man's very kosher, actually. He actually is very Orthodox. He's just an agnostic about it, okay? So whereas we're not supposed to write 2 or more letters or paint so much on Shabbos, he'll paint on Shabbos because that is how he keeps it holy. Did anybody give him a hectare? Why would he try to get a hectare when he's an agnostic? If you don't know what a hectare means, it refers to an exemption, and there's a lot of different hectares for all kinds of things. The new 12 tribes of Israel will emerge out of the differing sects of Judaism. The ultra-Orthodox Jews are the new Levites. The Ashkenazim, and by the way, we're referring to Ashkenazim that are not part of the ultra-Orthodox when we say the Ashkenazim. The Ashkenazim Jews of the north, Germania, or Twa, basically where Rashi was. And the Aframim, also known as Kush Afra or Black Jews, Jewish West Africa, that's Jewish West Africans, the Aframim. Like my rabbi is part of that. My rabbi, Yehuda Moshe, is, by the way, an Afram Jew. That's a Jewish person of West Africa. Which I have shown my Siddur before. My Siddur is of that group. I get my Siddur from them. I could also say that not only is Rabbi Yehuda Moshe my rabbi, that's probably Dr. Weisfeld's rabbi. We are in good contact with him. So that's my family. And because AB is my family, he really is. So we have the same rabbi. The Aframim, Jewish West Africans, and the new Judahites. So the new Judahites are the Ashkenazim and the Aframim. That refers to the northern Jewish people, Ashkenazi, and the West African Jewish people, the Aframim, also referred to as Kushafra. I don't know what Kushafra means. It is not actually a combination of the words Kush and the modern Hebrew Afro. It is an ancient, not ancient, sorry. It's a forgotten medieval Judo-Arabic term that nobody actually knows the meaning towards. But it is a word that is applied to a legend based on an actual thing that was going on. There were these Jewish West Africans who were very kosher, and they did exist in West Africa. And Kushafra is a word that is given to a legend about these people. Long live Kushafra. So, yeah, just recapping, the Ashkenazim and the Aframim are the new Judahites. The Mizrahim are the new Benjaminites. By the way, Mizrahim are several ethnic groups who cannot be called Ashkenazi or Sephardi. Jewish Arabs count, but so do Jewish Persians, or the ones in Iran. This is all Mizrahi. So Mizrahim are more than one ethnic group, but they are connected largely through Judo-Arabic. Except in the case of Persian Jewry, which is still Mizrahi, they're like quadlingual. If you know anything about those guys, they're very, very interesting. So I didn't say trilingual or bilingual. I said quadlingual. I'm sorry to anybody if that's not the correct term for linguistic and 4 languages. When the exile ends, a portion of each of the 12 tribes will live in both Palestine and diaspora. This means a small portion of each tribe will be living in Palestine, while the greater portions of each tribe will live in the flourishing diaspora. And let me clarify, Joseph is the Samaritans. Yusuf is Samaria. There's a lot of rabbinical authorities that would be pissed off at me. Fortunately, my rabbi agrees with that. There's a lot of things that Rabbi Yehuda Shlomo agrees with me and Dr. Weisfeld on, which really offends certain people. Go figure, the most righteous and well-known Jewish non-Zionist rabbi, or maybe even anti-Zionist rabbi, if you really get to talk to him the way that I do, in modern Orthodox Judaism, is a black guy. European modern Orthodox Jewry just gets whiter and whiter, and Afro, modern Orthodox Jewry just gets less and less white. It just gets further and further dark. It's not as much. I mean, you read into that what you will. Just don't try to twist what I'm saying. But it's interesting, the ironies of this world. By the way, this world in Hebrew is called Olam Hazeh, and the next world is called Olam Haba. And Olam Haba should not be confused with the Messianic age or the age of Mashiach. They're not the same thing. Anyway. When the exile ends, a portion of each tribe. When the exile ends, a portion of each of the 12 tribes of Israel will live in both Palestine and diaspora. This means a small portion of each tribe will be living in Palestine, while the greater portions of each tribe will be living in the flourishing diaspora. Israel is all of the Jews in the world. We are not a country. Gentiles who refer to Israel as a country are anti-Semitic Judophobes. Palestine is the holy land of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Eretz Yisrael is wherever there is shtetl. Eretz Yisrael is wherever there is shtetl. And yes, AB, you should be connecting that to Doikat because it is virtually the same thing. Palestine is the holy land, Kodesh HaEretz. Palestine is not the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael. The old city of Jerusalem will become the third temple on Zion when purged of the Zionists infecting the holy city. The old city of Jerusalem is called Al-Quds. Jerusalem is no longer just the old city of Jerusalem. Surrounding the old city is metropolitan Jerusalem. The old city of Jerusalem has 4 quarters: the Jewish quarter, the Christian quarter, the Muslim quarter, and the Armenian quarter. And by the way, Armenians have every right to be frustrated with Muslims, as it was in the Ottoman Empire that they were murdered. This is still not fully recognized, and Turkey's agenda in Syria is probably where I'm going to take the argument against Dr. Weisfeld on this. That being said, I want to make this clear. Syria is by far the most complicated country in that region. Palestine, Israel is the most simple. It doesn't get more confusing and complicated than Syria. So while I disagree with Dr. Weisfeld on Syria, there's parts of what Dr. Weisfeld says about Syria that I agree with him on. There's parts of what I say, too, that he agrees. We disagree, and he actually did end up agreeing with us until a fake anarchist told him to do otherwise, because I've never known anybody more susceptible to COINTELPRO than Dr. Weisfeld. And I'm never going to take that back. His actions prove it a lot. But I do have to redeem his reputation, even though he doesn't realize that has to be done, because a lot of people have the wrong idea about him. That's not really his fault. I will let you know right now, he was set up by the same motherfucker that set up. I don't know if motherfucker is a word that you can apply to a woman, but by the same bitch that did this to me, Jason Unruh, Dark Snowy, and Red Pagan Nicole. She did it to him simultaneously by isolating us from him. She is very much Jezebel. Jezebel is the way I would connect. Oh, she hates it when I archetypically connect things. She calls it fascism. The fascist calling the anti-fascist a fascist. It's funny as hell that she does that. Sorry, I'll be more precise. She's a radical liberal, which is still a fascist. as radical and liberal are contradictions. It's like saying anarcho-capitalist. It's a contradiction. Or saying national socialist, which implying nationalist socialist. It's a contradiction. Nation's not contradiction. Nationalism is. And nationalism is new, whether people realize that or not. In fact, it is because of nationalism that people don't understand anymore what a nation is, even though nations continue to exist regardless of this lack of understanding. Last page. Just so you can see it. The old city of Jerusalem upholds both interfaith and religionism. Interfaith means religious groups living in peace together and working together. Religionism means being against notions like Jewish Christian, Christian Muslim, or Jewish Muslim. Religiosity is a matter of orientation. So no one can be of two or more religions. So no one can be of two or more religious traditions. Although that does not mean you can't be influenced by others. I certainly am. I am truly the wicked son. Religiosity is a matter of orientation, so no one can be of two or more religious traditions. Reject Zionism. Recall always, there is no Zion in Zionism. As long as there is a state of Israel, the exile of the Jews will continue. Free Palestine next year in Jerusalem. Amen. And that's when we eat. So, this was the Haggadah that I read to you. It is a bit unconventional, but I hope that for those who need the outreach that I was able to provide that. I hope that Dr. Weisfeld found it of use. And I hope that we can continue a dialogue where we will not be hating on each other.
I'm going to end this by saying something that I hope everybody can just remember about this. The point, the point, as I said, to the Christians is because it's for the souls. It's the only way to save the damned souls that Rome has damned, forcing them into perpetual unfair reincarnations, which can only be rescued themselves from by a belief in a Jewish zombie. It actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. So they did righteously, and they had harmed the idol market terribly with their free distribution of the icons. However, this didn't destroy the entire idol market, and while they did a lot of good, they ended up destroying the name of the deity. It was with Muhammad that the name of the deity was restored. So Christianity had a very divine purpose, but so did Islam. Unfortunately for Islam to be, accurately able to convince people of things, there had to be falsehoods in the religion from the start. One of them being, okay, we're going to take away this crap about Jesus being God or semi-divine or a savior, because that's just nonsense. But we're going to say he's the Messiah. And we're even going to acknowledge the virgin birth, but we're not going to acknowledge that he was crucified. Now, see, if you're Jewish, you know that he was born of a virgin. Sorry, if you're Jewish, you know he was not, I repeat, not born of a virgin. And that he died on a cross and never came back from the dead. If you're a Christian, you think that he was born of a virgin, died on a cross, and was resurrected in 3 days and was raptured up into heaven. If you're a Muslim, you believe that he was born of a virgin, didn't die on a cross, some imposter died on the cross, and he spent the rest of his days living in Jesus, that is, spending the rest of his days in Egypt until he got raptured into heaven to return later in some unknown date in the future to fight the Dajjal, which is the Arabic term for Antichrist. Okay. So, the big thing to keep in mind is Islam refers to submission to the one, to the unity, or the one God, being more monotheist in that tone, because Islam is definitely monotheist, whereas Christianity is definitely Trinitarian, and not the only Trinitarian religion. Where there's Wicca, you got to keep that in mind as well. And Wicca actually predates Gardner and its namesake of being called Wicca. The actual triple goddess religion goes back very far, and it actually predates Jesus. And you can see evidence for this everywhere. But anyway, God is truth. When I say that, I mean that very deeply. If it comes down to that, I have to be willing to die for the holiest people in the world, Meir Sharim, if it comes down to that. And as much as I disagree fiercely with Christians, I have to be willing to die for the Christians of the Orient. And it looks like I might have to with what has happened in Syria, because I know about these things. And that's one thing I'll say, is Christophobia is not okay. Now, Christophobia does not apply to all Christians. Like, the Catholics in Canada, it most definitely does not apply to them. They run Canada. There's nothing, whatever crocodile tears, like, they're not persecuted. They run the full fucking country of Canada. So, like, and let's be real, the French Catholics are the worst of the Roman Catholics, the most bigoted and the most racist. May they crash and burn for their stupidity and their just sick, twisted, bigoted beliefs about everybody else that is not them. But at the same time, you have the advancement of Roman Catholic and Jewish relations in the United States of America. As shit as the United States of America is, there's one thing that did come from that emergence that was good. Catholic-Jewish relations became more sincere all of a sudden. And this is largely because the United States of America was largely founded on killing Catholics for no good reason other than long-lived Protestant deist Freemason nonsense. And by the way, I'm not into Freemason conspiracies. I can get into what the Freemason order is and how it works and where I understand their knowledge actually came from. Pretty much anything Hermetic, Freemasonic, or Rosicrucian is ultimately from the Magi originally, and that gets into a whole different thing. But yeah, with Muhammad came the end of the idol market, and he also restored the name of God, or the theity. Whereas the Christians had destroyed the name of God, but they had successfully destroyed the Roman Empire. The greatest victory in the world for them was Constantine. I am pro-Constantine. I don't like a lot of things about Constantine, but the best thing about the Christians is that they destroyed the Gnostics. People think the Gnostics are the victims, but Christian Gnosticism is pure anti-Semitism. Christian Gnosticism is what taught that the demiurge is what the Jews worshipped, and therefore their God was the devil. It was the Trinitarian Christians that put a stop to that, thanks to people like Constantine. Now, Constantine was no friend of Jewish people, but his mother was no enemy. She was actually rather cordial. In fact, if you ever read the Toledot Yeshu, never is Queen Helena attacked as a bad person. She didn't exist at the time of Jesus, so it's a really strange allegory, and I love the Toledot Yeshu. I think it should be more, spread out. But what is going on? Like, it's confusing unless you understand the purpose behind it. Queen Helena was never our enemy. The Sepulchre should live forever, just as Al-Aqsa should. But this gets in the point. I am willing to die for the Sepulchre if I must. I will die for Al-Aqsa if I must. The Ark of the Covenant is in the hands of a bunch of Ethiopian Christians, as is the will of the theity. The Holy of Holies is underneath the Sepulchre, guarded by the Muslims, as is the will of the theity. To fear God is to die for Al-Aqsa, or the Sepulchre, or a voodoo shrine, or if somebody knocks over a Hindu temple. I fear God too much to tolerate it. God is truth. There is no actual person in the sky or a presence that's going to rescue you. There is only the truth. And nobody can perceive the truth because, as the scientists now find, we only perceive a very small fraction of perception of reality. And yet, we go around telling each other that we're all delusional because we are perceiving it in a way that allows us to function. Myth is truth. You cannot understand how scary it is, like how many Trotskyists and Marxist-Leninists equally think that it's okay to destroy the last untouched hunter-gatherer society that's actually somewhere in India. That they need to be industrialized. That's called colonialism, and it is the first sin. Yes, I will die for the Muslims. Yes, I will die for the Christians. I will die for Meir Stream if I have to. And shame on all of you Yidden that don't see that don't understand that that is what the fear of God means. Ana Yehudi, Ana Sephardi, Yo soy Andalusi.
Ooh, shalom, shalom, shalom.